Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Mitchell. I'm with Salesforce.com Professional Services, and I'll be facilitating the discussion today. We're going to cover single versus multi-org, what's right for my deployment. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart since I get to speak about it all the time, so now I can speak to a bunch of people about it. We'll also have two great speakers today, Frank Monaco from OpenText Corporation and Jason Atwood from Morgan Stanley Smith Barney. Each of them will present kind of their perspective and how they got to where they are today as far as their org strategies. Everyone's seen this throughout Dreamforce. You kind of know the message. We're going to kind of skip through this. So really the agenda for today, I'm going to kind of cover some of the observations we've seen with the various deployments that we've done. We've distilled it down to a couple attributes you generally want to consider when you're making an org strategy, and I'll cover off on those. And then we're going to walk through the decision-making process for both OpenText Corporation and Morgan Stanley Smith Barney and how they got to where they are today and how they're supporting their environments. Then finally, we'll wrap up with a question and answer. So really some of our observations is, in the past, Salesforce kind of grew up with a seed and grow strategy where we would see a lot of lines of business kind of take their own deployment approach. They'd get an instance up and running. They'd see success, and then various lines of business would kind of tack onto that success and carry forward with their own strategy. I'm sure there's plenty of you in the audience today that have kind of experienced that. Now today, we've seen these conversations around orgs and things like that kind of accelerate earlier on in the life cycle. I speak about org strategy with prospects. I speak to customers early on in the implementation cycle. So now these discussions have been accelerated because people want to be more strategic about it. While seed and grow is great, and there's nothing wrong with that approach, and there's very good reasons why multiple lines of business would have their own instances. And to be honest, it's been good for Salesforce as well because we've had the opportunity to do a bunch of org merges. So we appreciate that as well. Ironically, we've also done splits where people were in a single org and then wanted to go to multi-org. So there are we can rationalize why organizations would want to go that different directions. But the big thing today is people are getting out in front of it. They want to be strategic about it. And they want to kind of think about it up front. What are the key criteria, and then make a more strategic decision that they can move towards, understanding that it may change over time. So, I've distilled this down into kind of four key attributes you want to kind of evaluate when you're making your org strategy. In the past, I've kind of had when I've had these discussions, I've tried to simplify it. And really boil it down to the key questions that we used to ask are, do you need to roll up reports? Is there a reason it keeps flipping back to the beginning? But so the two questions we used to ask are, how quickly do you want to get there? Because autonomy allows you to move quickly. And then do you have a reason to roll up all your reports across lines of business? Because as many of you know, if you want consolidated roll-up reporting, you generally need to be in a single org. And those questions are still very relevant today. But as we took a more strategic look at it, we really narrowed it down to business model, culture, how are you going to support your environment, and ultimately there are some technology considerations that you need to evaluate. I'm going to walk through these, and then I'm going to turn it over to Frank and Jason to kind of walk through kind of how they evaluated along these lines and how they got to where they are. So really, what is your business model? The left and the middle are really what we see most organizations. Either you have kind of a business leadership and multiple lines of business, common business processes, centralized leadership. So we see a lot of those instances, as well as we see the middle as well. And the middle column is where we have varying lines of business that they may or may not have common business processes, and there also may be a level of autonomy that each organization kind of do what they want. And then finally, this is a model that we're seeing more and more today, and customers are asking us for and asking us about. And this is really more of a distributed model. It is multi-org, but it's premised on a single org, where you have a parent instance, it's distributed out, you give your customers or partners a level of autonomy based on a managed package, but they can do client-specific customizations. So each one of these can have their own strategies. So just because you have a specific model doesn't predicate you to a specific org strategy, but it is something that you should consider. You know, do you have business autonomy? Do you have common business processes? Things like that. The next question you need to ask yourself is, what is your culture? So are you really looking to leverage Salesforce to increase your collaboration? Do you operate in silos? Do you have strong sponsorship that's driving decisions from the top? So organizational cultures, a lot of times, the org strategy will be highly influenced by that. So, you know, I've had conversations where customers where it is very siloed and segmented today. Each line of business or operating unit has their own technology platform that they're leveraging. But as part of moving to Salesforce.com, they want to increase collaboration. They want to allow a greater view across, and so those conversations are really what are you trying to get out of it from a cultural standpoint, and understanding that you may have to knock down some walls that exist today. The next slide is really around your support model. So support needs to be top of mind, because, you know, we can't. I always advise my customers, you don't want support to be an afterthought, and you know, you need to think about it as you're going through your implementation, as you're thinking about how you want to deploy, because there are key decisions that'll drive your org strategy. You know, so autonomy, the concept of autonomy will continuously come up as a theme when you're doing this. But what is your governance model? How are you going to tackle your release strategy? How are you going to enable new features in Salesforce? So these are things that, whether you're in a single org, you need to account for the whole, and when you're in multiple orgs, if you're supporting multiple orgs as an organization, how are you going to keep them aligned, and how are you going to administer those multiple instances? What is the governance strategy? How are you going to do knowledge sharing? Things like that. So understanding your support model will help aid you in making the decision. And then finally, there are technology considerations. So you know, I touched on reporting earlier. So, you know, the one key driver why most organizations go to a single org is the reporting. They want to be able to report across lines of business. They want to be able to get the roll-up reports. They want that single view of the customer. So reporting is a consideration. There are also org limits, so number of custom fields, which I know is a point Frank will speak to. You know, security and access. So what is the visibility model? How does your ownership work in your accounts? You know, do you leverage, you know, territory management as a feature? So how complex is your security model? Do you have a blended public and private model? So these are all kind of, you know, early on design decisions that, you know, will also facilitate, you know, a single org versus multi-org strategy. And finally, data volumes. You know, when we do a lot of org merges, this is one thing that we commonly see is you could have, you know, while the data volume isn't that large in and of itself, when you have multiple instances, when you put it all together, what are your volumes going to start to look like? And then, you know, do you need to reevaluate your security? Do you need to consider something like divisions, things like that? So there are key technology considerations that you need to evaluate. The big thing here is none of these in and of themselves are singular. You know, our recommendation is generally, you know, take each one of them, have elaborative conversations, and really focus in each of these areas where and there's always going to be pros and cons. You know, this is a point that Jason will touch on earlier, but there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to what direction an organization should go. It's really based. It should be based on what's the best thing for your organization. So we have customers with multi-orgs, and it works well for them. We have customers that have single orgs, and it works well for them. So it's really, for all the organizations in this room, it's really a question of what's the best solution for your organization. With that, I'll turn it over to Frank to talk about the OpenText story.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Frank Monaco. I'm Sales Operations Business Lead for the OpenText Corporation. Basically, you can consider me the conduit between the business and our technology IS department. Talk a little bit about OpenText. We are an enterprise software company and leader in enterprise content management. We are basically helping organizations manage. Oh, sorry. Oop, backwards. Where are we going here? Oh, I gotta keep going. So here's Brian's great presentation. Oops, gotta go back one. So basically, we help organizations manage and gain the true value of their business content. OpenText brings 2 decades of expertise supporting 50 million users in 114 countries. And obviously, to help us facilitate our CRM needs, we've chose Salesforce.com. And currently, we're running the enterprise version. We have 2 instances of Salesforce currently, and that was a result of an acquisition that we did back in 2001, 2002. They're running independently. We didn't feel the need to break up that business unit need. So we, until recently, when we had some business decisions, executive managements wanted to get, again, a lot of the issues that Brian was talking about earlier with reporting issues and getting that information back into a single regional model. So we made a decision to consolidate from the multi to a single org. And again, it was based on standardizing our business decisions, reporting, and processes and systems. We finally consolidated over a 2 to 3 month period, and we finally consolidated in October of 2009. Currently have 1,000 users, and we are now running 3 global regions in North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. And we're now running a standardized sales process across all regions. So operating in a multi-Salesforce.com org presented some key challenges for OpenText. Our move to going from a product-specific business unit org, which was really as a result of our acquisition, to this new inherited regional model, which was rolling up to our 3 regions. Again, one of our instances was used specifically for product business units. They did have a very similar regional structure, but it was very specific to the product lines that they were selling. And at the time, OpenText felt that it was necessary to actually keep them separate, have them run up naturally through their own sales management hierarchies. And the other instance, which was our main instance, included basically the rest of the world, and we followed a process for that specific area. So obviously the decision came, management, executive leadership came in and started realizing that we're not getting our true picture of our organization. This business unit area was working independently, couldn't get the reporting as we wanted to see it, and we had to make a decision on a couple things. We still wanted to run by our business unit structure, our regional structure. So we had to make a decision. Are we going to move from working in two independent systems and actually modify each system so that they are rolling consistently up a common regional structure? Or do we take that and move it into a single org and bring basically our brothers of the other org into the rest of the family? Excuse me. So again, we had some acquisitions. That was the main reason for this challenge. We had multiple CRMs, and along with that came multiple ERPs as well. Very unique processes, selling processes, management structure in both orgs. And there were also independent management reporting. Some regional challenges. Again, it's all stemmed from our decision to go into a regional model and have some common standardized processes. And having the second org working in various regions of the organization, the different cultural languages, the diversities, they were pretty much focusing on how their business unit needed to be modified in order to meet the global changes. And they didn't always meet with what the rest of our company was doing. So it was very important that we actually had some common consistencies there, and again, just sort of caused problems down the road. We weren't sending the same messages across the globe. Another key challenge is the reporting and analysis. Again, we found ourselves working in a model where we took this business decision, we took the sales group from the business unit model and said, all right, well, we need now to incorporate you into our current regional structure. So we grabbed our reps, pushed them into the sales structure and territory structure that we have in our main org. So they're working under that platform, but still working in the second system. So it was really getting cumbersome, and the reporting wasn't always jiving. They had opportunities sitting in other areas, and getting those reports to roll up to management was a nightmare. That wasn't the only area. Sales was brought in. We have an account development department which focuses on our leads and our marketing automations, and again, they were also affected by this because we basically took the personnel and amalgamated them into the main org. So again, we had some system issues that needed to be addressed because our second org was working independently. They had their own administrators, configurators. They basically had a very laissez-faire approach to how they added fields and how they assigned access and permissions. The creation of page layouts, which I'll talk about a little bit later. It just grew, and there was really no structure. They were working so independently and making changes that the rest of the organization just didn't really keep up to speed on what they were really doing, and so that caused some headaches. We had multiple financial ERPs, so we had this business unit working in a separate financial ERP system, and then our main org doing the same. And we also had some initiatives going on at this time too. So the business is now deciding, hey, wait a minute, we want to start using some of the Salesforce technologies, forecasting model, quote to order entry areas, which we all had in separate ways of doing things. So again, some of the challenges here was how do we now utilize some of the great technology that Salesforce is offering us in forecasting and order entry and get this in both orgs. And rather than going through the nightmare of implementing them independently in two orgs, that sort of led to the decision to go to a single org. So to address these challenges, we did need to make a decision. So our EVPs were restructuring the sales management hierarchy. Both orgs were pretty unique. We did still have a focus, even in the main org, again, around products. And we had reps independent selling certain product lines. Well, that model has changed a little as well, and we needed to make sure that the sales reps were now brought into the fold and then able to sell our multiple product lines. So we had to actually go into the move from a business-centric process to a more regional model. Some additional areas here around the regional versus product org model also affected our marketing automation tools. We purchased a new marketing automation tool, and that sort of led towards the decision again, well, do we want leads funneling into two different orgs? Do we want them running independently and passing those leads through different processes? Or do we take this as a green light to say, well, here's an opportunity now. Let's start consolidating some of our marketing automations as well. And so that again also led to consolidating. So we did a lot of consolidating. It was Salesforce, it was sales structure, there was marketing. We all brought them into the single family in order to accommodate some of our main pain points, so having the two units. So again, I talked about briefly some of the Salesforce initiatives that we wanted to bring forward. We were really eager to get the forecasting model. We had an independent homegrown system there, and that was sort of getting outdated, and coding it was just getting to be a real pain, and IT was looking at that and going, well, we can't keep maintaining this new forecasting model that we have, so we have to think of other ideas. And so Salesforce's forecasting model was a big consideration. And so having that initiative coming from IT and from the business saying, hey, we need to do something here, that also drove our initiatives to merging orgs. We also wanted to implement what we'd coined a order to cash implementation, which is basically our order entry and quoting processes, which again, spreadsheet based, working independently, hard to manage in both orgs. And IT also took on the initiative of looking at our financial systems and saying, hey, wait a minute, with these acquisitions that we recently had, we were maintaining multiple ERPs, and that's not making sense to us either. And it all stems from reporting and making sure that information is rolling up to the right people so we can make those business decisions. So IT initiated a plan to start merging our financial systems into one, which sort of just led again to the next phase of saying, well, it makes sense now to just go from that multi-org to a single org now that we're pretty much consolidating our whole infrastructure. So that was the business model. That was the decisions that went around why we wanted to go to a single org system. What I want to talk about now is some of our strategies around and the challenges that consolidating to a single system helped us through this process. So what we're looking at here is our two orgs. The one on the your right is our main open text org system. Very simplistic, very regional. Didn't have a lot of layouts. Didn't have a lot of, well, can't say we didn't have a lot of fields, but they were very specific to our business processes. The one on the left was our business unit org structure, and because of the laissez-faire attitude and how the admins were managing that, they would create very unique and specific page layouts, permissions, roles, and it was our job now to look at this and say, okay, we've now got this business directive that says we have to merge our orgs. How do we do this? We're looking at this data and we're going, all right, well, let's do some gap analysis. Let's take a look at at the systems itself. And what I tried to represent here is that it was a nightmare. At first, you're looking at all these page layouts with different fields, and first step was, okay, let's see what the differences are. So the business had to get involved. We tried to take a first stab at it and say, all right, well, we have our standard fields, we have our custom fields. How similar are they? Is it still necessary? So we ended up having a week-long brainstorming session. We brought in some key business personnel throughout our organization to have some frank discussions around, is this process, now that we're moving to the common main org process, is what you were doing on the business unit org really makes sense now? Is this something that we have to keep? Is this something that we can get rid of? Can we just store it somewhere? If we have to get it, we can get it later. So these discussions took place for about a week, and we laid out the foundation. We tried to identify the gaps and which ones we could actually bring over, and we were able to actually eliminate a lot of redundancies, and a lot of it was because of the specializations between the UK and Germany and Australia, or Asia Pacific. Okay. So this slide just sort of gives you, I'm not going to talk too much on it. I may, but we'll see. What I wanted to represent here is you're going to have in a multi-org, and again, this all stems from the fact that we had an acquisition. These fields existed before we ended up with this business unit or this company, and it really depends on what were the influences, what were the processes, and what were the business decisions around creating that org and the fields and the layouts and all that. So I just want to do some comparisons here. We're always going to have some common fields, but I wanted to compare it to some of the options objects that exist. And you can look how in our first org, leads, the fields that were used for leads were around 59, whereas almost doubled in our second org. So lead management, how that was being processed, seemed to be more of an influence on how they ran their business there. Whereas in the second one for contacts, for instance, you're going to see it doubles in reverse. So both orgs are now managing on a different philosophy. So it's very important, I think, if you either decide to go single or double or multi-org, to really keep in mind how different are the processes, and at the end of the day, when it's going to come back down to is can you get that information and consolidate it to the right people? And this is an area that was quite a bit of a headache for us. Move on. So if you are considering either moving to a multiple or merging a multiple system into one, just wanted to point out some key best practices, mostly at the business level. So if this was an IT initiative, you definitely want to get your executive sponsors agreeing on this. We were able to get this early. The importance of it, it was already identified at the business level that having two orgs didn't make sense for us anymore. So we already had that executive sponsor green light to go on and move forward with this project. We took a step from our training processes and tried to make sure we socialized this integration process. It wasn't a surprise to anyone. They kind of knew at the sales level that, hey, by the way, people from the one org are now going to be brought into the second org as a sales rep. You're going to now move into a different territory. You're now going to be selling more products. So that communication went out to the sales reps. Marketing, same thing. You are now going to be part of the global field marketing group and the global account development area. So those socializations already took place, as well as the ultimate, which is we're closing down the one org and moving it into the main system. what that also led to was processes. So one of the things that made this transition easy for us was the executive leadership said, regardless of what the process on the business unit org wanted, we're following the main processes. So the whole process, the whole plan was to make sure that when we did bring over the information, it fell in line with the model of our main org. So a lot of decisions were pretty cut and dry when we had to say, are we going to need this? Or, I mean, we don't even do that in our org. How important is that? The decision to say, well, not important was a lot easier. Team structure, alignment, and dedicated resources. I would say this is probably a very key component to any project, pretty much, and especially if you're going to be merging Salesforce orgs. What we did here was we went to the affected business units and different departments and asked for resources. So this wasn't just an IT project, this was an IT business collaboration. And we said, look, we need people. Either you give it to them, give them up 100% so they can work dedicated to this project, because we needed their expertise, or a portion of that, and we'll work on hopefully backfilling the percentage that is left behind. For myself, being part of the business unit, IT, they wanted 50% of my time, so I had to find a way to get 50% of my time working on the IT changes and dealing with the business and just strictly on this project while still doing my current role. Program cost structure. Again, just make sure that you've got your costs aligned. There are going to be some unexpected costs that are going to appear. As we started going through the consolidation, we realized, hey, we want triple backups. We weren't content with just the backing up that we did. So we went back to Salesforce and said, look, we need you to back up the configuration, some of our data, so that if during our consolidation, you're able to actually flip the switch during a certain time frame and get back to the original state. So we didn't want to disrupt anybody because we were doing this over a weekend. And come Monday, we wanted to make sure that we were either going to go for it or we were going to shut her down and get back to the double orgs and reevaluate. Kickoffs, very important. Again, it comes back down to socializing it. We always wanted to make sure people were aware. Project plans, program plans, that just leads into the documentation, next point. You really want to make sure you're documenting everything. Well, even if you're starting off, what were your business decisions around your processes, around why you wanted that layout, why you wanted that field, what was driving the profiles that you were creating? Because at the end of the day, when a few years pass, you might come to a point where you're looking at it going, well, how do we now communicate between the two orgs? And so we were faced with some issues here. So again, very important to document either as you're consolidating or even when you're originally making your decision to go one single or multi-org. And again, you want to make sure that you've got POs created, that you've talked to your procurement department, that they're aware that there are going to be some unexpected costs, and that you've got people in contracts ready for sign-off. So the results of the single org. I touched on most of them, but for us, it was our business model. It was our EVP's decision to say, we have this main org working fairly well, and we wanted to make sure that we can get them into the system accurately. So again, it's pretty much based on your organization's business model, and that's going to drive how you make your decision to go single or multi. For us, this allowed us to align and achieve a single business model across all regions. We were able to now roll up our sales reporting and forecasting on a regional and global VP level. It allowed us to get our marketing automations more robust. We were now funneling them through a single department, so our lead generation was improved. We didn't have a good example, we didn't have a rep sitting in the lobby of one of our customers. Meanwhile, from our other organization who was working independently, and they just didn't know that they're working at the same company but selling different product lines, that they're there. So this helped that sales process consistency as well. Common terminologies, layouts, fields, that alleviated so many problems when it came to just talking and training, consistent messaging. For training, we were now able to create some e-learning modules, and we didn't have to worry about creating multiple e-learnings and multiple training as new hires came on board, as well as single source support. So the admin side, we had 2 admins who were working pretty much independently, making changes and following their own directions from their bosses. That improved, both at the technical and business side. And also, again, alignment with global roadmap. And again, the whole duplication of work, manpower, and processes just reduced our costs as well. So, in summary, our challenges of maintaining 2 unique organizations under one business model just didn't make sense for us. And we had to, and so we had multiple system inheritance due to acquisitions, which may affect you as well. Again, we wanted this regional product org specific differences that really didn't work, or worked for short term, but didn't work as the business was getting larger, and we really wanted to make sure that we were getting that information all in one area. We had our multiple ERP systems that IT wanted to consolidate, implementations of order to cash, and a different Salesforce and forecasting that we wanted to implement in Salesforce. Again, getting down to that common business process. We wanted a simple model. We didn't really want to it separated because our revenue roll-ups were not working very well because we're always going to spreadsheets and trying to figure out which field represents that field in the other org, and then saying, all right, well, let's add those values together and see what happens. Again, as you're consolidating, you want to make sure you document everything. And you're also going to want to work closely with the business unit because at the end of the day, especially if you're on the IT end, it's the business unit that's going to start screaming. And you really want to make sure that you've got their sign-offs, that they're ready and listening and participating in this change with you. That way, you've got everything covered. And so, as I mentioned, of October of 2009, we consolidated our systems, and still a couple bumps and bruises. Only been a month in, but I think we've got everything under control, and everybody is now working pretty efficiently. So that's my presentation. Thank you, everyone. I would now like to introduce Jason Atwood from Morgan Stanley Smith Barney.
Am I on? So my name is Jason Atwood, and I'm a multi-org. So I'm going to do a quick agenda here, talk about who I am and why I'm here and what I'm going to talk about. Then give some decision points that we came across and how we got to multi-org and how we handle that, build versus adopt, and talking about who are the users. It becomes a real big thing that you're going to look at if you're evaluating the single versus multi-org. And then cost versus complexity, of course, they sometimes go hand in hand. And in the end, throw up some best practices and some funny slides, make you laugh. All right, so I'm from Morgan Stanley Smith Barney. I run a group called the Central Salesforce Office. We have 6 different production orgs, so I really believe in the multi-org. 14 different applications across all of them, 1,800 users. We have a whole slew of different types of users, from branch staff to back office, FAs, sales reps, calls reps. So we have the whole gamut going. And then in terms of licenses, we also have a spread of licenses. We have enterprise licenses, we have unlimited licenses. So it's really it's a mixed environment, and you'll see that becomes one of the things you worry about and you look at when you're doing multi versus single org. Obviously, we're also using Wealth Management Edition. One of those little getches when you're doing multiple orgs is that you'll have different editions, and those might not mix together. And across all of them, 50 custom objects, lots of differences in all of them. So go through some of the reasons why. So first, you got to look at where you're going to build versus adopt, right? Cute slide. But sometimes it isn't your decision whether you have multi-orgs. You could go through an acquisition. Frank went through an acquisition. You could grab get another org. We started with one org, and we had 8 different applications running in that org, and got them as we went along. We'd have a little group that came in. They had some org that they had spawned off. Another one did a split. We've actually done both a split of orgs and a joining up of orgs. So sometimes you're just not going to have the control of whether you can do it or not. And starting is easy. Obviously, getting a new org up and running, production is lickety split. You can just throw people in there, enable their users, get some data, and they can up and running. But as you go along, you'll realize, and I think as when you try to bring them back together, it really supporting it becomes much, much harder. And I'm a central group, so I support multiple business lines, and it's difficult. We have multiple logins for multiple orgs. We have different processes for each one. We have different user types, and so when you're looking at your org strategy, just think about, okay, well, not only am I going to have all these different orgs and different data, but then you're going to have a support level for each one of them, right? Obviously, we went through a big example of org migrations and consolidations. It's something you can do if it suits your business or if you have to, but it's obviously something that Brian Mitchell will be more than happy to get his professional services in there to help you with. Then really, do you want to talk about who are the users, right? So first thing is, what are the business users you're dealing with, right? Each individual org of ours, we have different types of business users. So I have a call center. I have a group running retirement registry type things. I have a group running governance applications. And we really work with them to figure out what they're trying to do and trying to get across in their business, what's their business goals, and those types of things. And that's how we get to whether we're going to put them in this org or that. We have another group that's using pure CRM, Wealth Management Edition, and it's in a separate org, and that's okay. We can live with that because it's outside of some of the other orgs processes. What is the business process for each different business? What are they doing? Where are they trying to get? Are they using marketing materials? Are they using blasts? Are they using leads and opportunities? Again, it's really digging in deep, and I think this is something we're all going to have in common is how do you dig in deep on what they're doing before you make these decisions. Support's a huge issue. Again, we're a central group. We support all of them, but in some of these orgs, we have different support models. In one of them, we handle it solely. We do password resets. We do updates. Another one, we have them calling a separate help desk. In a third, we have different help desks for different layers. So a password reset desk. We have a group that does production support issues. So again, it's a mix. And sometimes you can't mix those, right? Sometimes you can't sort of make it into one. So you have to go with the multi-org. And then really with technology. So Salesforce is its own technology. Obviously, you just need a browser and you're in. But what kind of desktop do they have? Do they have a lockdown desktop? We have some users who have absolutely lockdown. They can't add applications. Are they going to be using mobile? Are they going to need things like, obviously, will they have Excel? Will they need use of third-party reporting tools? And so, again, more decisions you're looking at when you're looking at single versus multi-org. And then different org types. So I touched on this a little bit. Org types don't mix. So whether you're dealing with a nonprofit org or a wealth management edition or a traditional, Salesforce edition, they don't mix and match. So you can't throw one into the other and have that be okay. So again, it's things you want to look at when you're looking at these decisions. All right, so good, fast, cheap. I love this one. You can only pick two, right? You can get good and cheap or fast and good, but you can't get all three together. So it does come down to the cost versus complexity, and always cheaper to start. It's much easier to get in there and just boot up your new org and get them into it. But when you get to this multi-org environment, the complexity is very difficult, right? You're talking about page layouts. You're talking about usability, users and their different profiles, blended profiles, which is our number one sort of killer right now. We have a profile that has like 6 different applications across it. Which I think we showed to Salesforce the other day, and the PM was like, wow, that's a big one. And we have profiles for one user because they have to have access to multiple applications. So these are the things you're going to run into when you try to do a single org versus multi-org. And then, of course, multiple licenses, and not just for the end users, but also for the support staff, right? For every person who needs to log into those orgs, they're going to need to use a different license. So I have to log into, I probably have 8 or 9 different production org logins. And it makes my life hard when trying to remember them all and all the emails and all the usernames. But then all of my group has the same amount. So you end up with lots of overlap. If you think of me times the 4 people in my group, who are 3 of them are here, times 8 orgs, right? That's a lot. So it can add to the cost of your implementations. And then what are you doing sort of short versus long term? So obviously if you're going to inherit an org, okay, we want to go to a single org, versus if you're going to, if you're building on with your businesses and you're trying to build out new applications, are you going to use common objects? Are you bringing in data feeds that you're going to want to use across multiple applications? Things you want to consider. And then really, this is the get into the data. Ask the tough questions of your business, because I think business groups, and I was or am one, they'll tell you what they want to do now, but maybe not what they want to do in 6 months. So maybe they want to use this one little object and this one little set of functionality, but they're really thinking down the road they're going to be doing these other 3 things. So make sure you dig in deep with them and find out what their long-term goals are. Strategery, it might be a Saturday Night Live joke, but you know what I'm getting to, right? You think about how your strategy is for your long term, and what you're doing with your orgs. Obviously, work with the business. If you're a tech team, don't raise your hands, but if you're a tech team, try to get as close as you can to the end user, and figure out what they're doing. Because again, if you're too far away from where the requirements are coming in, you might be playing that game of telephone, and they might not be coming in exactly correctly. And security and visibility is huge. Single org set of users, very easy to deal with security and visibility, because they're in one org. They might have all the same type of thing. A call center, they might all be able to see the cases. CRM, they might have, it might be an open model. You do multi-org. If you start doing multi-applications with one org, you get a security and visibility issue. You get sharing rules. You get who can see what and why, and sometimes that doesn't, it doesn't go well. And then really document everything. So this is my big list of things you should document. I'm sure you know all about this, but really what kind of applications, and not only external applications, but only applications you're building inside. So we've built multiple applications for business groups, and they can have access to, they can be in one org and have access to 3 or 4 applications within that org. Your record types, your page layouts, again, things that you all know, but just throwing it up as a reminder to fill up my big documentation bin here. Integration points. What kind of data are you pulling out? Are you pulling out data for crystal reports to do reporting? Are you shoving data in daily through scheduled data loads? These are all things you need to worry about. Naming conventions are huge. How are you doing usernames? So if you have multiple orgs, how you name your fields, your page layouts, your profiles becomes a really big issue. And so keeping that documented as you start, even if you are inheriting or building at your org, make sure you come up with some of these things. Again, workflows, Apex classes that you have in there, how are you going to get them pushed? How are you going to get them documented? Reports and dashboards, that really brings back to naming conventions as well. You can confuse a lot of users if in one org you're named with acronyms, and the other org they're not. And then user types, of course, profiles, again, a whole bunch of things that you can document. But make sure you get these. And let's go into some, a best practice in the end is, this is my Zen slide. It's going to be okay. Single versus multi-org, you're going to be okay. I mean, it won't be perfect to start. So we've made big mistakes in some of our org decisions and come back, and in the end of it, have come back and changed it. And I think that's the point, is that it will change. Whether you inherit the org, or whether you're building an org, or whether you're a big company, if you're a company that's 30 to 50 people versus 50 to 50,000, any business group can go out and take a credit card and go start up their own Salesforce instance, and you might not know about it. In fact, Mark Madrid here from Premier Support knows of more orgs in my organization that I don't know about. And yes, he's saying yes. So you don't know where they're gonna come from. So even if you have this perfect idea of the single org, which we did, and I've grown for years. Again, over the last year, we've inherited so many that it's okay. We'll get there. And then you can change it. Again, professional services will be more than happy to help you. We have 2 or 3 different org consolidations going on right now. Some are going to be massive and painful, and some are going to be pretty easy, right? They're using the same types of systems, they're using the same types of data, but you can change it. And at the end of the day, since you are at Dreamforce, you can always buy more licenses, throw some more people in a separate org. But again, I think the big piece to pull out of this is, it doesn't have to be one or the other. There's no right or wrong answer. And generally, if you're evaluating both sides, just take all these things in, but it'll be okay. Now back to Brian to bring us home.
Thanks. So really, two good stories. One single org, one multi-org. First point, there is no right or wrong answer here. So it really depends on your organization, what you're trying to accomplish, things like that. The one thing that I can say is, think about the end game and where you're trying to ultimately get, and take the time to really evaluate your decisions. There's pros and cons to both approaches. As you're evaluating, whether you want to look at your business process, your culture, your support, weigh the pros and cons of either direction, because there will be, in either approach. And then make sure you have universal support on the decision. So if you're gonna pick a direction, get everyone to buy into the direction. What we sometimes see is, you have your dissenters that think everyone needs to be in their own org. If you choose a single org strategy, make sure you get the buy-in at the top and it gets pushed all the way down. Because once you pick the path, you want to all be moving in the same direction. So with that, we can take questions. Everyone, you've been to multiple sessions. If you wouldn't mind completing the survey, get a chance to win the Nano. But we can take any questions that anyone may have for either myself or any of the presenters.
I have a question for both. So did you also consolidate your ERP back?
We're still doing that. Right now, our first phase was to consolidate the systems itself. So we wanted to make sure that our SAPs, we had multiple SAP systems that we wanted to get talking the same way. So we wanted to just consolidate our ERPs first, and then we were going to bring in its consolidation or its linkages with Salesforce. I don't know if that answers. Sure.
We're just having a single contact record playing to the decision. So you may have lots of different business units, but they share the same client, have different workflows and stuff.
Sure.
Where does that decision, wanting to have a single contact record, play into whether you go single versus multi?
Sure. So I get that question a lot. So it comes down to, are you trying to get a single view, whether it's a contact, whether it's account, things like that. What you really want to evaluate there is how do you control ownership? Do you want? Are you trying to collaborate? So
If you want to have a single contact view, do you therefore have to go to a single org?
Generally, so yeah, if you want that single contact and you want it to be shared across multiple organizations, then yes. That normally I would advise a customer that that path, that requirement that you're talking about would lend you towards a single org strategy. So yes, that single view is critical. Where you get the multi-orgs is kind of in Jason's example, where multiple applications, because they do a lot of platform stuff. Distinct applications, distinct user populations, things like that.
So Jason, at Morgan, do you have that situation though? On all of your different multiple orgs, do you have clients that are in different orgs?
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely. Not only in different orgs, but in different different systems and different back-end systems. I'll give you a good example of where we're sort of a single. One of our big apps is for customer service, but internal customer service. So for the FAs to call in and ask questions about products or get help on level 2 stuff. And we actually use the case record, right? But we have 5 different business groups all using cases for 5 different purposes with 5 different record types and page layouts, which is a lot of complexity, and my team here will all nod their head. But in the end, we can actually show some great roll-up summaries to show how our branch network, how our FAs are collaborating or sending in different feeds, whether suggestion box, whether they're calling level 2, whether they're calling sort of the other help desk, but they're all coming in the same org. The different help desks only see what they're allowed to see. So you can do both. But if you want to have one single contact record, well then you're going to go to one org.
Sure.
So how do you handle, do you have users or multiple users that access multiple orgs and they do confuse like passwords, like which username, which password? How do you
Our users are absolutely brilliant, so they never have a problem with that at all. No, we absolutely have tons of problems with it. And to add on to that, we have, in different orgs, we have different types of user provisioning. So some of it's automated from back-end systems, so it's feeds that feed up the users. Other ones it's handled out of my group. Other ones it's handled by another group. So we mix and match them. I will say we're looking to go from our, I think, 6 or so down to 3. And for those 3, there are 3 different distinct user populations. And at that point, we want to create the situation. We don't want to create the situation where you have to log into 2 orgs, because that's obviously a cost issue. But it's also it's a single sign-on issue if you're running single sign-on, and then it's also the user issues. But yeah, so we do get a lot of oh, I logged into the wrong org. Is this the org? Where's that app I was looking for? We try to do that with naming conventions, so using usernames that kind of distinguish at the end of the username. You have an email address, but you can kind of fudge it at the end and put whatever you want. So you can say whatever org2.com, and so they kind of know from the username what org they should be logging into.
Sure. For OpenText, we have a reporting services department where we have our built-in BI tools that take care of that. But we also mainly focus when it comes to dashboarding and sales reporting, and we're using the Salesforce tools reporting.
Yeah, I say we're doing a mix of both for different orgs. Sometimes it's just all 100% dashboards and reports. In other cases, we had to get to the next level, so we use something like Crystal Reports, which we're big fans of.
And also to point out on that topic, and we see different things with different customers that have a strong data warehousing strategy. You can get away with a multi-org strategy and still have the consolidated reporting. It's just that if you're trying to get that level of reporting out of Salesforce, that's where you can't report across the multiple orgs. So it is achievable. It's just what are you trying to do in Salesforce versus outside of Salesforce?
Yeah, we're actually leaning towards the multi-org approach, mainly because of the power that the system admin has. We actually feel the sysadmin is too powerful, and so I was wondering how you guys have addressed that issue, or perhaps if Salesforce is looking at modified levels of system admin.
So you can answer that best.
Yeah, it's an issue. It's come up in a couple of orgs that some of the sysadmins have too much. They can see too much. We've done some delegated administration, which is helpful. That you could say, for password reset desks, we have users only can log in and hit and do passwords and things like that. Generally, we say that that's the life we live in Salesforce, and that's some of the power you get with it is that the power is you're going to have someone who can do all that work, but then yes, they're going to be able to see some things. But it's a great example of why to go, and one of the things that slipped my mind, but one of the reasons that if you want to go multi-org, if you want to create an org that has such sensitive data that you don't ever want anybody to ever see but these 3 people, and you have to give sysadmin to those people, or for one of them, that's a good example of why you would actually want to do a separate org for that.
Sure.
So what do you guys use to document everything in all the different orgs, first of all? Then secondly, you guys have a process for evaluating cross-track impact of changes in different orgs, right? And maybe a way to evaluate code or classes you can leverage in other orgs.
Well, we, being content experts, we tend to store and use just your basic tools, but most of it's being housed and shared within our own enterprise systems. So we use Project, we use Word, we use Excel. It's still those same kind of documents. IT could probably speak more to that, which they're not here right now. So.
We do, since we're a central group, what's nice is that we actually meet every morning and we discuss what's going on. And even though not every team member has ability to log into every org, or they all have ability to log in, but they're not responsible for every org, we do a lot of cross-sharing of ideas and problem solving. We use this tool called Salesforce.com for documentation. We run our PMO out of that, so requirements and things like that. We actually are in the process or have trained most of the business application owners who are sort of the the end users to log their requirements in there. And we've also taken on the motto of being pretty agile. So I would say we're a little bit more the laissez-faire, which gets us into trouble certainly. But we want to be able to really adapt quickly to their needs and do that a lot.
Sure, one more, and then I'm sure Frank or Jason will be more than willing to kind of answer anyone else's questions. Go.
One quick for open text. How long was the project to consolidate? Let's say from this week-long session you mentioned. How long?
So we did a lot of pre-planning ahead of time. We actually, it actually took around 6 months. But that's because we had the business putting a hold on a lot of time frames that IT wanted to say, we want to roll out now. Well, now is end of quarter. It's like, no. So we had to wait, a little while after that, and then all of a sudden something else would come up or something like that. But in essence, the time frame was about 6 months, and a lot of it was meetings, projects, and just going through the process. The actual consolidation itself, we managed to get that done over a weekend, 24-hour turnaround.
Thank you, everyone. If anyone else has any questions, you can grab these guys at the back of the room. Appreciate it.